logger, or I call it a hobo. So I put this here yesterday. So it should be collecting temperature data for the whole day. So it's useful when we take a temperature measurement, it's just one time of the day. This thing will show how the temperature changes during the day. So I'm just putting it here and assume nobody's finding it, and it's in the shade. I always want to keep it in the shade for temperature. At what time of the day? It's 24 hours. What's the start and end? Can you tell? Guess the starting point, the ending point?
How was it 104?
Yeah. You know that's the morning? Yeah, there's no time stamp.
So what's the start time on here?
The hottest.
Close to noon. Probably.
Like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right, but it started before the peak, so it's a little bit before the peak,
Okay, so
right?
around noon.
Noon, Mountain Daylight Time is exactly right.
Yes.
That's
You took weather and climate. No. I just took
for
it.
a meteorologist. That's 18Z because it's Greenwich Mean Time is or Zulu time. It's 18Z. So we just it's UTC is Universal Time Coordinate. Right, UTC. So
did you not put anything on the x-axis intentionally?
right. So, but you should, right? So what's missing? You should put something on the axis. Plus, I'm lazy because it would have taken to put one thing on there. Why does it go up and down? And what's the hottest temperature on there? 104, right? Is it actually get that hot out here?
Yeah.
The official high temperature yesterday was 89, believe it or not. The day before that was like 92.
I beg to differ.
A big area.
And that's at 3 meters and not in the sun. So is that one in the sun or in the shade? In the shade, kind of, but if you look at it right now, there's a little sun coming through. And so that's one thing to always think about with temperatures is it's always measured in the shade. So when you're measuring a temperature, a regular thermometer is gonna say it's really hot if you have it in the sun. Think about what we were doing with the last 2 days, really coming up with our own protocols. And those are the protocols that you are going to do, so it's reproducible, right? So I think it's good to come up with your own things. What is the consistency? You can always go back. If you want to enter your data into some database, then you have to make sure you're consistent. If you're doing a single research project, you can do that protocol. Any comments on protocols? Any of you all? Maybe you don't think of them as protocols, but that's what you're doing when you're coming up with a method, right? A consistent method.
The one you just put over there was too.
No, but that's the right question. Is this official, and can this go into that database? So that's one of the barriers, kind of, with Globe and doing those protocols that we won't worry too much about today. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is cycles and spheres. So the spheres in Globe, it's divided into spheres. It's the atmosphere, and today I'm Dr. Atmosphere. We have the hydrosphere, the water. We have the soil, the geology. We have, what else? What am I missing? The biosphere. And then we've kind of got into the Earth as a system. How do all of those things work together? So think about temperature. How does temperature work? All comes back to the sun. Your temperature is going to be all over the place, depending on exactly what the surface is you're looking at. And so ideally you do it in 9 spots, 5 meters apart, and you get an average. And one of the things they like to do that with Globe because they compare the ground data with a pixel from the satellite. And so So when we did things with soil moisture and things like that, they didn't even want our urban data. They just wanted someplace out like this, that a big kind of homogeneous area.
We're doing things in a consistent manner that it makes it meaningful. And then we're also able to A/B digital versus analog. So if that thing's battery runs out, oh my God, what are we going to do? Well, we still have these. Maybe it's not quite as accurate when we get 72.5, and that's like 72, 73, like it's, you sacrifice a little bit, but it's just so that, the students know what is out there and what, how we've been able to take temperatures and what that means. So yeah, surface, subsurface. And then real quick, just because I'm a geology guy, Colorado's #1 geologic hazard is expansive soils. So foundation problems, roadways, infrastructure, all of that stuff. It's a huge issue in Colorado. I worked for a civil engineering firm for a while, so I didn't realize how big of a problem that was. Some clays can expand up to 20%. So you see those roadways that look like roller coasters. It just wasn't properly treated. We have a lot of expansive soil here, clay. And so that in the classroom, it would be cool to do it on a smaller level, as if you were to be able to build some sort of foundation or roadway, saturate it, have it completely dry and then saturate it, see the expansion. So those are, other types of things when you come into contact with this. It obviously has some clay because it can hold a structure to it. Now, as we move away, we'll do this again and see, does it have more sand? If it's got more sand, it's not going to hold that structure, right?
If you were doing an experiment, how would you set that up? I mean, would you try to take the temperature at the at different depths? Would you do it different times of the day?
It also depends on the research question. So if we were doing something with a fish, like the fish spawning, and they only care about the inner banks and the temperature of the inner banks where the fish go to lay their eggs, then I would stick to just the outer banks of it, where the fish would be. But if I'm doing something where I'm trying to take the overall temperature of the creek, then yes, I would do some from the inner banks, I would do some in the middle, and then I would probably go down every 100 meters or so and just do upstream versus downstream and stuff like that. And then if there's beaver dams too, so if we find a beaver dam, you could do upstream versus downstream. So it's definitely variable on the question.
And so what's the difference going to be with standing water versus moving water?
Yeah.
How is that going to affect the temperature?
Oh, right.
Moving water. How about a big lake that's deep versus a shallow lake? How is that going to be different?
Right. Exactly. So depending on the question, if it was something if it is about how deep it is, then yes, we would have to go in and go to the bottom of the lake and try and figure out how cool it is or how warm it is down there.
I think it leads to an interesting conversation about thermal pollution, having excess heat in the water.
Right.
Because when we first started taking temperatures of the water, I was just kind of why? But it wasn't until I started doing background research where I was okay, the temperature of the water, even if it changes a couple degrees, really matters to the dissolved oxygen, which affects the life living there. And it was really interesting.
Cooler water means that there's more dissolved oxygen, meaning that there's more life and more. And then you could always take macroinvertebrates, which will also confirm all of that as well.
For sure. And then just thinking about the different causes of thermal pollution, urbanization, not having that impervious surface that doesn't absorb the water it should. Power plants. I know there's been laws put into place where power plants have to cool down their water now before they put it back in the environment because it was affecting the life that was living there.
They're very sensitive to all that.
Yeah.
Just the slight change in temperature, and this goes back to the ocean.